What's up, Bombshells? Welcome to Bombshell 1111 Podcast, Therapy for Women of Color. My name is Keya, and I'm your host. Generally, podcasts request donations, but I want you to show love by simply subscribing to my social media platforms by visiting my website at www.bombshell1111podcast.com. I want to see thousands of subscribers on this platform. Leave your comments and I'll show love by shouting you out on my social media platforms such as Instagram and Facebook. I want to thank you for your continued support as always. And with that being said, let's jump into this new episode. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Bombshell 1111 Podcast, Therapy for Women of Color. My name is Keya, and I'm your host. Tonight, you guys, we have a very special guest by the name of Sam Mitchell. He is a well-known podcaster, entrepreneur, public speaker, blogger, writer, podcast editor, and podcast coach. He is also the podcaster of AutismRocksAndRolls. So without further ado, let's welcome Sam Mitchell and his mom, Gina Mitchell, to Bombshell 1111 Podcast. Welcome, you guys. How are you?
Yeah. Woohoo. Thanks for letting us be here.
Thank you so much for having us. We're really excited.
Thank you guys so much for coming on and being a part of the podcast. We had to do 1,000 takes, maybe, possibly. I was so excited, Sam. Your energy, I just love it. You can just tell that you are a very special individual. Your energy, just from the top of our conversation, it was just so up there. And I really love that. And Miss Gina, thank you so much for coming on to be a part of the podcast to share a parent's perspective as well.
Oh, you're very welcome. No problem at all.
So you guys, we're going to just jump right in. And the focus for tonight, you guys, is going to be generally just talking about autism and helping the listeners understand more about it, and having more knowledge and tools to be able to work with someone who has autism or to individually work with themselves if they are living with autism. So let's just jump right in. So you guys, autism can be a different experience from person to person. We all know that. But let's go ahead and break down the stigma of autism. Sam, we would like for you to share your personal experience with living with autism throughout this episode on the podcast tonight, in addition to sharing any knowledge and tools that you may have about living with autism. Okay? All right. So let's jump right in. So I did a short intro, and I also have the bio in the description down low in reference to who you are, Sam, what you do, and that type of thing. But I always like to give the guests an opportunity to do a small intro for themselves, because who could do it better than you, right?
I guess. Thanks.
So, Sam, give the audience a short intro about you, who you are, what you do, where you're from.
So, hi, I'm Sam. I graduated high school, and I do run my podcast. It's called Autism Rocks and Rolls. It's about autism and how we cope with daily struggles that you may or may not understand. And I was diagnosed with autism when I was 4. I have over 6,000 downloads and over 270 followers.
So, Sam, how old are you now?
18.
18. And you're going to have a birthday coming up soon, right?
Yeah, next
week.
The next Wednesday I'll be 19.
Yeah, so you guys, let's give Sam a shout out already. Happy early birthday, Sam.
Thanks.
Whoop whoop.
Yeah, for 19. Not the biggest age alive.
So, Sam, let's just go ahead and jump right in, and let's just start talking about the topic for tonight, autism. From your perspective and with you living with autism, why is it hard for people with autism to communicate?
Because that's a good question. For me, it's hard to communicate because conversation is too much of a puzzle that's not put together. you're putting puzzle pieces together 24/7. Whereas me, I need to take puzzle pieces and put them together one at a time. I can't put puzzle pieces together 24/7. Figuring out what to say next is scary too.
So throughout the years, and especially through your teenage years, how did you begin, or how have you developed to learn how to communicate with others?
Say what I want and don't care. That's the honest answer.
Which
has gotten in trouble.
Yeah,
me in trouble
I'm Gina. I'm Sam's mom, and I'll kind of piggyback off what he just said. And him kind of saying what he wants to say can actually be a really cool thing, because he is opinionated. I mean, he comes from very opinionated people, like in his family. But that can get you in trouble sometimes.
I can bite you in the butt.
Yeah, and kind of explaining to Sam, really, like, there's a place and a time to act a certain way and to say certain things, and you kind of have to adapt to your surroundings and your environment. He has a really hard time with that. To him, it's like, for example, when he was growing up, we always taught him, like, honesty was the best practice. I mean, if you lie, it can cause issues, and we would say that. I mean, that's, we really believe in honesty. But he had a really hard time, because then he was saying things all the time, and we were like, okay, Sam, don't say that. And he would be like, but you said to be honest. And a kid that's not on the spectrum, like I guess a typical kid, can figure that out pretty easily. They know, like, okay, when you're around grandma, or you're at school, or you're at your job, maybe you don't say this, or you don't do this. But it was like, how can we explain that to him? Like, you don't lie, but you can lie sometimes.
Yeah.
Just trying to process that has definitely been tough for him.
So speaking from a parent's perspective on that, Gina, what has been some of the struggles for you as a parent, with kind of dealing with teaching, Sam appropriateness and things like that?
I mean, it has been a struggle. I'm not going to lie. He was diagnosed when he was 4, and he was having some behaviors before that. So my husband and I knew, like, okay, he's probably on the spectrum. I'm a teacher, so I had kids throughout the years that were on the spectrum. So I had a little bit of experience. So I kind of knew what to look for, but it was hard. But I always say it may have been harder than some parents raising children, and then not as hard as some. Yeah. Everybody has their own struggles. Everybody has their own beauties. I mean, everybody's family dynamic is different. So we never really treated Sam like he has, like, this is an autistic kid and his name is Sam. It was, this is Sam, and he just happens to have the brain wiring of autism. That's how we treated him. And we had very high standards for it. We still do.
No, you don't.
Well, we do.
Well, that's what I want you to make clear. I don't want people to think I'm like you're a strict person.
No, I'm not. Anytime I say we've had high standards, he thinks that I mean we've been strict. We haven't really been strict. I've just always expected Sam, with whatever tools that he needed, we want him to be successful in whatever he chooses, to do. So that's just how we raised him is, yes, you have autism, but you still are capable of, like, getting a job and making money, and, you still have to take out the trash. You still have to do this. You still have to do that. I mean, we just never really treated him like the kid with autism.
You're still a normal person.
We treated him like, well, not even normal. We never treated him normal, because I don't even believe in normal. Mm-hmm. There's no normal. Like, that's what I've always thought. And when we would have conversations about that, Sam would, when he was younger, he would say, am I normal? And I would be like, I don't really know what that means. Can you show me somebody that's normal? because I don't know anybody that's normal. And
not you.
Yeah, definitely not me.
And not me.
And not you. It's one of those things where
definitely not her. She's too peppy to be normal.
I really love her. But as far as the word normal goes, it's like, who gets to pick that? If you're having a conversation and somebody says, "Oh, they're not normal," to me, that's like really arrogant. Like, why do you? Maybe you're not the one. Maybe you're the one that's not. So I don't think that exists. I mean, and so Sam is Sam, and he's not abnormal, and he's not normal, because that means he's being compared to somebody else. And I don't know if I'm making any sense. But
oh yeah, you're making a lot of sense, because the way I'm taking it and looking at it is that everyone has some flaw within themselves.
Yeah,
there's something. Yeah. And you know,
everybody can something.
Yeah. And I can relate it a lot to when I work with individuals who have mental health illnesses. And, you know, some people tend to be scared of them. But I tell them I'm more comfortable working with them than I am working with people who don't have a mental illness. At least I can kind of know what to expect. You know what I mean? So I totally agree. I totally can get your analogy there. I can get that. Yeah, totally.
Well, and I think even people that have disabilities, and we don't even really, I mean, I recognize disabilities because there are people that are disabled because of a certain condition. I completely get that. And there are people that are on the spectrum that are disabled because they are very low functioning, and so maybe they can't do things. But we are really firm believers that every single person on the spectrum, off the spectrum, low on the spectrum,
they got something to offer. May be a while to find it, but they got something. There's something to offer society. They're a human being, and we just. If society would take the time and kind of strip away that negativity and like tap into what people love and what they're good at, I think things would be so much different if we could look at people's skills.
Good point. You a good point there, Gina. You led right into the segue for my next question. What are some of the tools that you have used as a parent to assist you along the way?
Well, I mean, Sam always went through, with me being in the education field, I did have an advantage because I've seen parents sit through IEP meetings, be really confused, and just kind of believe everything the teacher says. And, you know, like if you're not in the education field, maybe you don't really have any other choice, but I was, and I didn't have to believe what the teacher said. And I understand the concept of an IEP, and I know the laws. And so that helped with me knowing like what was legal, what he needed, what they had to do. And we just really relied on all of the accommodations that were offered. And I always raised Sam, don't ever be embarrassed because you have to go to the resource room 6 times in a day. And I'm not. Who cares? I mean, it's what it's there for. And why would you not do that to be successful? I mean, so we just always treated it like, let's get you, I think what any good parent does with any kid, let's get them the tools that they need to be a successful, functioning member of society. Like, let's do that. And that's what we really relied on, was what is available, to help Sam.
Wow. Sam, that's so great. You have a great support system there. That's really awesome.
I think I take it for granted too much sometimes.
Yeah, I think we all do sometimes.
Well, I mean, a lot of people take a lot of things for granted unconsciously. So, you know, hey, you know, like your mom said, no one's perfect. No one's normal here. So at the end of the podcast, Miss Gina, if you do have any on the top of your mind, I would like for you to share some resources, online resources that you may know may be available for parents, that they can go and kind of use as a reference or a guide through challenging or difficult times, or just as a teaching tool. More so at the end of the podcast, if you have any, Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's keep on going, you guys. I'm really enjoying this conversation. So let's talk about sensory overload, because some people don't understand the dynamics of autism. But before we go into that, Gina, can you help the audience understand exactly what autism is, and then kind of go into detail a little bit about what sensory overload is and what does that look like for someone who does have autism?
Well, with Sam, I mean, it's like you said before, people can have the exact same diagnosis and be completely different, like just because you have Asperger's or you have autism or middle of the road autism, it doesn't mean you act the same. That's everybody's brain is wired differently. But with autism, it literally is a neurological disorder to where Sam's brain is firing so rapidly that sometimes it's like an overload. So that kind of leads to sensory overload. And it really is just those neurons and firing constantly. So I always tell people, if you think about going to fireworks, he used to hate fireworks because it was so spontaneous and so loud. And I was used to, from what I read and the research I did on autism, it made sense to me when a book I read said if a typical person goes to fireworks and it's really, really loud, we will cover our ears maybe because we're whoa, that's really loud. But what happens in an autistic brain is it's times 1,000. So if you think that it's loud to us because of what happens in our brain, it's kind of it comes alive because there's this big boom. For somebody on the spectrum, it's it comes alive times 1,000. So whatever noise that you hear, somebody that's on the spectrum hears it times 1,000.
No, it's mainly feels for me.
Or feels
I don't like clothes wet. Good luck with trying to wear a wet shirt. It ain't gonna happen.
He hates wet clothes, but I don't like a wet shirt. That will kind of bug me. But if I'm in a situation where I'm crap, I got my shirt wet and I can't change it for an hour, I'll deal with it. And I'll have a wet shirt. To Sam, it's
it's a pinching feeling.
It's needles, it's a pit, it hurts him. And so there have been times where I'm dude, we don't have another shirt and we're in the middle of a store and you're gonna have to deal with it. And he does. He's much more uncomfortable. And it's I
tuck it in mainly.
Yeah.
I tuck in the shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if that makes any sense, it's just it's just time. I always say it's whatever we feel, it's times 1,000 for somebody on the spectrum.
Thank you. Thank you for giving that perspective on that. Thank you. So you guys, is it important to stick to a routine? Would you say?
I would say partially no, partially yes. Younger me probably would tell you yes.
Mm-hmm.
Older me would tell you go with the flow. Let's put it that way. Sometimes now, in certain situations with school, yeah, but I don't think some stuff need to be formal. A party doesn't need to be formal. I mean, when you're younger, sure, but not older.
That is a huge behavior, though. That is a huge behavior of people on the autism spectrum is routine, and that was one of the things that when Sam was diagnosed, we noticed if he was 3 years old and I picked him up from preschool and I said, hey buddy, we're gonna run to Walmart, he would have melted down because I didn't tell him before we left home that day that we were going to go to Walmart after school. So that's huge. But as he got older, he was able to kind of go with the flow now. But that definitely was a behavior when he was little.
Oh, and speeding up to now, Sam, you seem to be well organized. Would you say that?
He stepped away for a second. I think he went to the bathroom.
Okay, that's fine. So Mom, we can continue.
Yeah.
So what would you say, Mom? Has he became is he more organized, or is he organized now? I mean, he has to be in some way to be able to do this podcasting and public speaking and things of that nature.
He is organized with what he wants to be organized with. And that's not a bad thing. He is like, loves podcasting. So it's really, really important to him. So he knows if he's going to make a quality podcast and he's got to keep things straight, he knows he has to stay organized with that. But other things that maybe he doesn't really have a vested interest in it, then he may not. But I think that's kind of I think that's kind of a typical person.
Yeah.
I don't really care about.
and me too, because what we tend to have more of a passion for, we put all of our time, all our efforts into it, and then other stuff, and we'll get to it when we're bored. Maybe not even then.
Exactly.
So let's talk about his podcast.
He's back now.
So welcome back, Sam. You had to take an intermission. That's fine.
Gotta get a drink. Got thirsty.
That's fine. What are you drinking on?
Well, drinking on beer.
Yeah, right, whatever.
Say Coca-Cola. Say Coca-Cola.
Sorry, Dr. Pepper.
Dr. Pepper.
Or
Sam, you gotta do Coca-Cola. You gotta go with Coca-Cola. Dr. Pepper, it tastes like medicine.
Oh,
bad medicine. Oh, now I got one thing Bon Jovi here.
Yeah.
Okay. Bad medicine.
Let's talk about your podcast, Sam, for the listeners who don't know and who aren't familiar with Autism Rocks and Roll. Let's talk about how you got started. How did you get started with your podcast?
After I joined my high school's media club, and that was with Thundercast, but since I can't be a senior in school forever, the only way I figured what to continue my media skills was make a podcast on my own. That's when I decided to create Autism Rocks and Rolls.
And what does your podcast, what does the platform focus on?
It focuses on behaviors of someone on the spectrum. Some will be autistic behaviors, some will be perspective with interviews, but some will be entertaining for fun, but they come back to autism.
And how often do you air your podcast, Sam?
2 or 3 in a month. They come out every 13 days, counting the day it comes out.
And where can the listeners, for those who are listening, check out your podcast when you post your episode and publish your episodes?
Say it one more time. I'm sorry.
Where can the listeners check out your episodes for your podcast? What social media platforms?
Oh, yeah, sure. I can tell you that. You can find me on Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, LinkedIn, Stitcher, Listen Notes, iHeartRadio, and Pandora, and Spotify.
See, you guys, he's famous.
AutismRocksAndRolls.com.
He's famous. He's famous. I told him he was famous. Repeat that one more time, Sam, for the listeners. What is the name of your platform again?
www.autismrocksandrolls.com.
That's the hub of it. That's where we're redoing this website right now, so it's a little bit of a mess, but it still has everything on there. But that's a really good central location to find everything.
And so before we head out, you guys, I still have a couple of questions for you guys, but I really want Sam, you, and Mom, you also too, Ms. Gina, to share one thing or one piece of advice with the listeners about autism.
Well, for autism, I would say be patient and take your time and enjoy life, enjoy the little things. That's what McFoley said.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would completely concur with that. Patience, especially if you have a child on the autism spectrum.
Or special needs, or physical needs, whatever.
Or just even typical kids need lots of patience. Kids need patience in general. But what I would say as a mom and like raising him, there were times when he would want to do things that maybe according to society wasn't normal, or it wasn't like what we should do. And I just never bought into that. If nobody was being hurt and he was not being disrespectful, because that's one thing we never tolerated was disrespect. But if he wasn't doing those two things, then I think you have to be open-minded, because if a child has autism, you can't make them not have autism and adapt to life like you do.
Right.
That's not the right thing to do. And so I was pretty open. There were things like he hates blue jeans. And I just remember at one point in his life, like he had like a Christmas concert or something. And I was like, buddy, you have to wear jeans. Like there are some times in life where you have to wear jeans.
And what happened though? Did you make me put them on eventually, or did I not?
I think you wore them a couple times, but I guess my point is I stopped and thought, wait a minute. No, he doesn't. Why are we pushing this? I mean,
yeah, this is not a big deal. No one else. I wear khakis. That's a good enough replacement for it.
Yeah. Exactly. Like
I'm wearing some right now, actually.
Yeah. So I just thought in my mind, there were just lots of things like that throughout life where, yeah, we kind of want our kids to do certain things, but you just got to pick your battles. And especially if they're on the autism spectrum, you have to go with it or your life is going to be completely miserable.
And so coming from a parent's perspective, Mom, Gina, what does it look like in reference to parents needing a support system for them as well, standalone, just as someone that they can kind of vent to? What is your advice on that?
Well, I think that you need to find people that understand, and I don't want to say, understand what you're going through, because I mean, our life's mission right now, Sam's mission, so it's his, and so it became mine, is really to take the negativity off of autism. So find people that are experiencing the same things you are, because there were days that I thought, I'm alone. Like my husband is our rock. I mean, he's an amazing person, but there were times where he struggled with, things. And so I didn't, you know what I mean? Like I just felt alone with everything. So, in those moments, it's so nice to talk to somebody. So, like when you say something, they get it, like even your parents or your best friend, if they're not experiencing it, in the back of your mind, you're like, you have no idea. You have, so that would be the first thing, is I really tried to reach out to people. I read lots of books. And honestly, right now, since podcasting is just like taking over the world, there are so many educational podcasts out there. There's a podcast for any topic that you could think of.
I'm going to be surprised there's a podcast for toilets. Let's put it that way. Yeah. How to install your toilet.
Yeah, I'm sure. Or a YouTube video.
That's
a YouTube video for sure. A YouTube video for sure.
But with podcasting, I guess I'm just saying, like Sam's podcast. I mean, his podcast was created at first as a hobby, but then, oh my gosh, it just exploded, and he realized I'm helping so many people. Like the kind of people that you're talking about could tune into Sam's podcast and pick an episode that might help them, with what Sam knows. So those are the things that I would do. Just to reach out to, like don't be afraid to ask for help, and reach out to like-minded people, I guess.
And I totally agree, because just even within this episode tonight, you educated me on looking at things totally different. When I tend to separate mental health and disability, even though I work in the field. So coming from a professional standpoint, the word normal, you made me second think and kind of compare and think about how I use that term. So you educated me tonight. So yeah, I thank you for that. So having people, like-minded people, is very, very important for you, and even just for self-growth, to educate self. So yeah, I totally agree.
Absolutely.
Gina and Sam, what are some resources that you guys may have available, off the top of your head, that you guys use as a family or individually, for parents, young adults, relating to autism, that the listeners can go and check out?
Yeah, so you can find me on Podbean, Spotify.
No, she's not asking that.
Oh.
She's asking what resources would you suggest?
Oh, my blog, obviously.
Sam does have a blog.
Oops, I made a mistake. Anyway.
It's okay. He is a blogger. And his blog is really helpful too, because it's like creative writing. So it's this really unique way of explaining how he's feeling and autism. Podcasts, again, are really good. And there's a lot of experts in the field, and we when we were learning about autism, we really relied on Sam's pediatrician. Sam has a life coach right now. So there's all kinds of professionals, and that's kind of the beauty of it. There's professional podcasts with medical doctors, which we have to have them. But then you have podcasts like Sam's that, you know, he has a disclaimer. I'm not a medical doctor. This is just what we figured out as a family. And, you know, so he has a podcast that looks at the emotional side of it. So,
which I think there's a lot of podcasts that exist with that.
Yeah, I think his is one of the few.
So Gina, would you say, and Sam, would you say, does your podcast cover a specific age group or a specific gender, or is it pretty much diverse for both?
Diverse is for anyone, even if you have purple skin.
Yeah. And honestly, it makes me think we've had people contact us and email us, and maybe they have anxiety. Or maybe they have
depression.
Have depression, or they are in a wheelchair, or they're blind, or something that they kind of feel like is a hindrance to them. But then they listen to Sam's podcast, and it gives them this different outlook of, yeah, this kid has autism, but he's doing all right. You know, so that's the beauty of it is, you know, the money's nice, but when he goes to bed,
money's just icing on the cake. This is just being able to help is I get to wake up and go and I get to help is the best part.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Well, I am so thankful and appreciative for you guys to come on tonight on Bombshell 11 podcast. I had a great time interviewing you, Gina, and you, Sam, both. You guys shared a lot of valuable tools and knowledge tonight. But before we head out, I want to allow you guys some time to send a shout out to your support systems or anyone that's listening tonight.
So probably those not listening, but we do have sponsors. We'll thank Wellspring Paint Solutions, definitely is our biggest sponsor. Perfection Auto Glass, Bell's Built Automotive, CPA Tax Service, Blue Boy Chocolate Shop, and what else?
The Barn on Maryland Ridge.
Salon 45.
And Pals.
And Green County General Hospital.
Yeah. He's got several sponsors. We always like to say them. And then he is part of a mental health network called the Mental Health Radio Network, and it's run by Kristen Walker. And we always like to give them they've done a lot for Sam. You know, they were really the reason that he got to interview Mick Foley. So we always like to give them a big shout out. And then just to our friends and family, it's taken a village, that's for sure, to get Sam.
Wow, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Sam, before we head out tonight, you know, I did also recognize that you had an opportunity to interview with Mick Foley. Do you want to share your experience really quickly before we head out? How was that?
It was fun. Good guy, one of the most humble celebrities you'll ever meet. He has a son on the spectrum, so we got to relate to that for a little bit. Mm-hmm. But also, I'm not going to lie, he's partially an idiot for taking he's partially an idiot for taking half the wrestling bumps. And I love it, though.
Yeah. When he says that, I know idiot is like a pretty negative term, but I think there's some like playfulness there when
there's
he says it.
There's a lot of
playfulness. Oh yeah, definitely.
He's not.
Definitely.
He's not. He's smart.
No, he's
the sweet, humble, smart guy.
He's a genius.
Who's also has 10% craziness in him.
Yeah. He's a little bit crazy, but he'll be the first to tell you that. But we really consider him a friend now. He's really a good guy.
Oh, that's so awesome. Well, congratulations on that experience, and I hope you have many, many, many more to come, Sam.
I hope so, too.
Thank you for having us. We really had a good time.
Yes, I had a good time as well. And thank you guys so much for coming on and being a part. So you guys, we're going to head out for tonight. Again, thank you so much for coming on and being a part of the podcast. You guys, always remember, you are a bomb within your own shell. Peace, love, and light. Until next time, you guys. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks so much for listening, and I hope you guys were able to leave with some great things that could help you in your personal journey. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe so that you're notified when a new episode is posted. Rate, review, and share this podcast with your family and friends. Also, check us out on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram at Bombshell 1111. And remember, you are the bomb within your own shell. Until next time.